first chair. Before I introduce Robin and Bonnie, I just want to plug for next month, our own chapter member, Gary Diana, will be speaking about his trip to Nepal, where he will share what he learned about the culture, his trek to Everest Base Camp, and the views from 2 summits. But tonight we're focused on a different continent, and we welcome Bonnie Thies and Robin Flanigan, who traveled to Africa in 2008. These 2 women, along with 40 others, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro to raise money for the American Cancer Society. In their presentation, they will share their training, friendship, and new insights about life and love amid their struggles to reach the top of the world's tallest freestanding mountain. And Robin, who is a freelance journalist, wrote a book about it, Climbing Out, here, an adventure in rediscovering life after loss, which will be available for sale tonight after the presentation, along with a couple of her other books. So, welcome, Robin and Bonnie.
So, I'm going to give a quick tutorial about using this microphone while we walk over to the podium. So, when you're using this, please hold the microphone so it points right to your mouth. The black one points right to your mouth. And it will sound louder than you think it should, but everybody will appreciate it. Okay?
We're going to start off with, can everyone hear me? We're going to start off with simply, thank you, thank you, thank you. Robin and I both had tears in our eyes, just when we were standing out there and everyone was coming in, and so many people that who we know and who we love. So we can't thank you enough for being here. You've all been part of that 15-year journey. So thank you. And we have a group of hikers who we know, and they're referred to as Journey of Inspiration group. So we may have to calm them down at some point. They might get a little rowdy. Yeah. So we figured. Truly, thank you so much for being here. Before we get started, one of the things that we're going to be talking about 2 things tonight. We're going to be talking about a book, and we're going to be talking about the climb up Kilimanjaro. The book, as we said, has been an adventure, and it's been a 15-year adventure, and it's hopefully been worth every step of that. So as we go through it tonight, we hope we'll walk through the book a little bit. In fact, Robin, we might talk about the book so much they might not even need to buy a stinking book. And then we'll all walk up the steps of Kilimanjaro, specifically the Lamotion Trail. Before we get started, if I can see, there's one thing that I wanted to read, 2 things that I wanted to read out of the book to give you all a sense of what this book is about. I'm going to come here and see if I can read it. These are the dedications to the book. The first dedication is to my daughter, Michelle. It was the gift of your love and the strength that carried me through the unimaginable. I love you to the heavens and back. Love, Mom. To everyone else, we all go through tragedies in our own ways. Often with some version of, I cannot get through this. For me, even after a good bit of time grieving, I felt as though my insides were going to implode. Eventually, somehow, strength emerged from within. I've heard similar experiences from others We don't always know from whom the strength comes, or do we? Faith, hope, and love do carry us through. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Robin, and she's going to get us started.
So thank you all for coming. I did want to ask, I'm going to be doing some reading. Is there a way to kind of turn the lights on and off when I do start reading? Is there a way I can see? I don't think I'll be able to hold the microphone and the book and this at the same time. It's a good idea. Can you do it? Okay, thank you, Marty. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, perfect. I did want to start out too by thanking everybody for coming tonight. This is blowing my mind. You know, when you hear that this is a 15-year journey, it's sort of, sometimes you laugh at it and sometimes you cry at it. But we really do believe it's happening when it's supposed to happen. There were many, many versions of this story that got written about. It started out as sort of a narrative journalism book, and that didn't really connect with people, and then it became close second person, and then finally it became a memoir told in Bonnie's voice. And once I was able to kind of get inside of her head, which took quite a while for me to do a lot of interviewing, but then I sort of tried to become her, and that's sort of what I hope you take from the book. I will read the author's note because I think that says it better than I can now, but I also want to say that the Adirondack Mountain Club is in the book. It's mentioned in the book. Journeys of Inspiration is in the book. So for us to be here doing this for the first time means so much. I've been very emotional today about that. Everyone on our trek up Kilimanjaro, like most anyone who has been through cancer, had a similar tale of shock and resolve. I had heard little about Bonnie's background, but enough to know she had a heavier load to carry than many of us. After becoming a sudden widow 3 years earlier, she had signed up for the climb to help push past her grief and return to the adventurous life she once shared with her husband. It was the kind of inspiring story that appealed to a journalist like me. Over the course of my career, I have found myself drawn to stories involving tragic circumstances, intrigued by all the ways people work through their pain. I have spent months with some of them, chronicling their grief and recovery for publication, wondering years later whether my interest helped or harmed them in the end. But not once over our year of training for Kilimanjaro or during our time in Tanzania did I think about asking Bonnie to let me interview her. 7 months after returning from Africa, nudged over Saturday morning breakfast by someone who knows me well, I decided to abandon an in-progress memoir about 5 years of infertility tests, treatments, and failed pregnancies. Writing about those experiences was keeping my anguish alive, instead of providing closure. What if I wrote about what Bonnie had been through instead? An interesting thought, but I felt uneasy about asking her to relive the bitter minutiae of her experience for an audience, no less. Wasn't that exactly what I was trying to escape by wanting to ditch my memoir? I called her anyway, 2 days later, just before leaving for work. After some nervous rambling, I would have sounded more awkward with a prepared script. There was silence. When Bonnie finally spoke, she said, "On Saturday morning, probably around the time you were having breakfast, I was praying aloud. I said, I don't know how, but it's time to tell my story. You just opened my heart. God has brought you to me." Somehow my act of feared selfishness had been transformed into divine intervention. I cried. I was more relieved than surprised by her answer. The truth is, in my experience, relationships seem to form when they're needed, and it turns out we needed each other.
Probably a lot of us have thought this before. These mountains that you are carrying, you are only supposed to climb. I'm just checking to make sure, because I know the lights came on. Can everyone still see the screen okay?
Yeah.
We've probably all done this. Carry the mountains instead of walking. And then eventually my experience was, at some point, I'm not sure when, but at some point I began to lose pieces of the mountain, boulder by boulder, rock by rock, pebble by pebble. When your world suddenly stops, you do lean on all of those around you and all of your family and all of your friends. It's an important piece of all of us. And when you begin to awaken from your grief, you climb a mountain. So one might ask, why would I choose a mountain like Kilimanjaro? Why would I say I want to climb a mountain that's, 19,341 feet? It actually began with Romania. After my husband died, well, actually, my husband Bill and I had taken a number of adventure trips with Rick French and Pat Ski. And so after my husband died, Rick would call me, and just to check in and see how I was doing. And he would end every conversation with, "Whenever you're ready for a trip, let me know, and I'll take good care of you." And I knew he would. So I began to search through his pamphlets and came across this trip to Romania. And I thought, well, that seems interesting. It included Transylvania. Who doesn't want to hike through Transylvania and see what might pop out at you? And so I sat down one day and I was ready to make a phone call. I sat down and I picked up the brochure, and there was a letter in there. Rick's pen name at the time was Rocky. I believe it was Rocky Raccoon. And so Rocky had penned a letter, and he basically said that he had been out in the Grand Canyon and he crossed paths with someone who had hiked one of his trips before. And this person said to him, he told him that he had experienced cancer a couple years prior. And he told Rick, if you ever have any kind of a cancer support trip, let me know. So Rick went home, did a lot of thinking about this, and this letter went on to explain that, and then the letter also went on to say, anyone who wants to come with me, I have no idea what this is going to look like, but we'll all end up at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro at some point. So I picked up the phone, I called, he answered, said, Rick, I just read Rocky's letter, I have no idea what you're up to this time, but count me in. So that really was my beginning of heading to Kilimanjaro. And it was more than just a climb. It was the support of the American Cancer Society. We ultimately raised over $200,000 for ACS at the time. And the banner that you see, every one of us went up that mountain with one of those banners. And we had countless, you might be able to see, but we had countless messages on all of our banners. Messages to people who had lost their lives to cancer, messages to people who were fighting, and messages to so many loved ones. This is what we looked like the morning that we took. This is taking place at the hotel. The morning that we took off for the climb. See how clean we are? We're clean. We're still breathing. Breathing was good, and we learned later how important that was. So that was when we left for the trip. I had mentioned earlier about our hiking group. We named ourselves Journeys of Inspiration. and Journeys of Inspiration continues on to this day. And this is a picture of our September and October hikes. So we get together as a group, sometimes more often, but at least once a month, and take a wonderful hike. It's a great group of people, unless they get too rowdy. Never. I'm going to pass this back over to Robin.
And I'll be quick. We're going to take you through these 5 climate zones that we took on our route, but I did want to say that when I think about what this trip up Kilimanjaro gave me, it not only gave me another family, which I will forever be grateful for, but whenever I have something hard in my life, I think, well, I climbed Kilimanjaro, so that was probably the hardest thing I'll ever have to do. And so if I did that, then I can do this. And so I'm just really grateful for that as well. So I'd love to take you through these 5 climate zones. It's going to start in the rainforest.
Okay, the 5 climate zones starts with the cultivation zone, and then move. I'm so sorry. I had the wrong microphone pointed. That moves into the rainforest, moves through the heather and moorlands, the alpine desert, and the summit Arctic.
And I thought what might be nice to do is, I'm just going to read between like a 1 and 2 minute snippet from each of these each of these climate zones, so you get a sense of what Bonnie went through on this trip. So if I could have a little bit of light, that would be great. Thank you. So this is in the rainforest, and it's already sort of getting a little challenging. I wouldn't be able to hold a conversation if I tried, even though I've double-checked my gear and triple-checked my packs fit, snug but not too tight. I can't shake my nerves. I wipe away more sweat. Can I really do this climb? The question is moot, clearly. I'm already in Africa, already at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, already putting one foot in front of the other. There is nowhere to go, at least for now, but up. Still, I can't stop the second guessing. My pack, weighing less than it did during training, inexplicably has become too heavy. I give it a quick hoist and search for the self-confidence that accompanied me a short time ago at the start of the trail, now muddy and slippery in spots. I take out my trekking poles, surprised to be needing them this early on. I talk to Bill. I'm not going to ask you to help get me to the top. Just help keep me safe.
Robin just asked me if I should remind you who Bill is. Bill is my husband, who died very suddenly.
Before noon, we move into the moorland. It's mostly a gentle walk. The trail is lined with tiny rocks that look like haphazardly spread gravel and make a crunching sound when disturbed. We pass mossy streams, small alpine flowers, and dramatic red hot peppers with flowers so bright they're blazing like hot metal straight out of the forge. Perennial succulents known as Senecio Kilimanjaro have thick, silvery, needle-like leaves that would look stunning in a porch container garden. Then the scenery turns psychedelic. A peculiar collection of giant groundsel plants resemble overgrown pineapples on a stick, some nearly 30 feet tall. I feel like I'm in a Dr. Seuss book, Phil says, his eyes wide with childlike wonder. This is the kind of stuff he must have seen in his head. I'm not a fan. The odd plants look out of place and make me feel even farther away from home. They remind me of how uneasy I felt in Romania last year because the trees in the forest grew differently there. They thrived despite being crammed so tightly you'd get lost 5 feet inside the darkness. How can you trust a place that doesn't make sense? Without an answer, I lean on what I know to be true, that I am not lost and am among friends who will make sure I stay that way. The terrain is changing again. We pass giant lobelia, an otherworldly endemic plant with concave, spiky leaves artfully arranged to trap rainwater, and soon the open moorlands fade away, replaced by sagegrass, moss, and thistles that announce the arid alpine desert region. Just thinking about the word desert makes me reach for my water bottle. Not that I've ever been in a desert this chilly. Just 45 minutes on the trail, nothing but uphill today from the get-go. Fog and wind have replaced the blue sky, and I'm shivering despite being in both my fleece jacket and Bill's coat. I pull on gloves and wrap my buff around my head in a way that makes it resemble the balaclava in my pack. The actual balaclava would be better, but I can't even think about stopping to fish it out. I need to keep moving, to keep sending oxygen to my cells and blood to my organs. I try to ignore the rumbles in my stomach. I should have eaten more at breakfast. Those are those psychedelic Dr. Seuss groundsel plants. Lava Tower. Feeling secure in Bill's outerwear and with Jim at my side, I walk lead-footed, keenly aware of the effort it takes to inhale for 45 minutes up the steep route to Lava Tower, a saw-edged volcanic plug, also known as Shark's Tooth. When it comes into view, it is shrouded in mist, jutting skyward like a fist raised in victory. The trail ends here. And then there's like 2 pages where the mist turns freakishly fast to rain and then sleet, and it starts feeling pretty dangerous. I grip Jim's hand hard to get around and over some of the largest rocks in our way. When I hesitate atop one of the more slippery ones, Jim sets his foot horizontally across the trail in front of me so that I'll slide into it if I slip. I appreciate the gesture and try to shift my attention to his chivalrous stance instead of the sharp pain in my knees, a persistent twinge impervious to the Advil I took at lunch for this very reason. Not until well into our descent does the weather, mercifully, begin to clear, leaving the landscape far below looking as if it has been sifted with flour. Water runs in rivulets off rock ledges as we gradually move into greener hills of Barranco Valley. By late afternoon, after an 11-hour day on the trail, far from last night's estimate of 7 to 8 hours, I stagger, sticky and stinky, down the final big slope into Barranco Camp. And actually, every day we had an estimate of how long our hikes would be. And if it was 4 hours, it ended up being 6 hours. And if it was, 5 hours, it ended up being 10. It was never right, which probably was by design, I'm assuming. Yes. This one? No, I don't think it is.
Can you hear me now?
Hold the black one closer.
When you're talking, can you hold it this way so that you're having to hold just on your chin?
Okay, that's Lava Tower. And now, summit night. This was a hard night. At this point, At this point, I was collapsing and hadn't eaten for a while and hadn't slept very well. And And that's me in the red coat, and Bonnie is behind me. I can't see the picture very well. In the blue coat, behind my head. Oh, and it's important, yeah, right, this is the important part. So on summit night, Bonnie started hallucinating. And in the book, it goes back and forth between italicized hallucinations and then real time what's going on. And she'd already gotten lost from our group by this point, and had seen things in front of her that weren't there. So this is kind of in the middle of all of that.
I think another important thing here too is the fact that when we were stopped here for our rest, we had tea in glass cups. Who carried those glass cups up there for us? The porters, of course.
Time bends, yards of progress feel like miles. For hours I trudge ahead in a hypnotic trance, my silhouette a wilted flower, the visions unrelenting. My stomach roils as I lurch ahead, and my chest works harder to accommodate an oxygen level only about half the amount found at sea level. At this altitude, the smallest physical pains take on cosmic proportions. If Bill were here, he would be handling this like a champ. He had a high tolerance for pain. One summer, tramping toward an ice cap above the Arctic Circle, he slipped on a scree-covered bridge and tore his meniscus. From then on, keeping pace with the group must have been excruciating, though he was able to make an astoundingly quick exit from the tent one evening to watch a line of women cross the hip-deep river in their bras and panties, their clothes strapped to packs held overhead. Bill's orthoscopic surgeon later said the cartilage looked frayed as a lace curtain. Another time, he waited 3 days to see a doctor for stomach pains that turned out to be a ruptured appendix. I, on the other hand, have never felt more defenseless. I want a whiskey. I want to survive.
I didn't know that was in there. And that's the summit. That's Robin, and I'm in blue. You can't really tell if that's even a person, but that's me all bundled up. Yep, and that is the summit. So those are the things. I have one more thing that I'd like to read.
I got to speak without a microphone for just a second while I'm looking for this. I know we kind of hopped into this, we sort of hopped into the story a little bit.
I know we hopped into the story pretty quickly. And one of the things that I should have said before is that one of the things that this is not a how-to. We all walk our paths the way we need to walk our paths. One of the things I'm a pretty big believer in is that it's not about closing the door. When things happen, it's not about closing the door behind you, because it's your past that makes you. It's your past that creates who you are today. So I want to read just a short part about Jim and I. He surprised me, but Jim, where are you? Stand up.
Right here.
Stand up. Stand up. Jim is my husband, who I met while we were training on the Kilimanjaro. And about almost a year after we climbed, we got married. Jim surprised me. Has anyone been to Angel's Landing in Zion? Oh, look at all those hands. I knew it. I knew it here. We got the top of Angel's Landing and he proposed to me. So that was a wonderful place to get engaged. But I want to talk a little bit about my engagement ring. I look at my engagement ring. Jim hadn't given me one when he proposed, assuming that I want to have a say in what it looked like. He was right. Instead of shopping around, I asked for his blessing. Can I go down there? I asked for his blessing to keep the setting. Am I good? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? There, that seems good. Can you guys hear me? Is that better? Okay. Okay, thank you. I asked Jim for his blessing to keep the setting for my 20th wedding anniversary band and substitute the diamonds on each side for tanzanite. The green-blue gemstone from Tanzania. It was a way for me to honor my past, and I don't need to cling to it or forget about it. A past that makes me who I am, and ultimately led me to Jim. Of course, he said yes. Robin, did you have anything else? I mean, questions and answers. Any questions?
So how long did it take you to get from the bottom to the top?
There were three different trails that we took. The trail that Robin and I were on was a 6.5-day trail. It was like 4.5 up and a day and a half down. It was 8 days? Oh, if I had known that, I Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sure. It's in the book. That's one of my favorite pictures, Esther. You see it? Where are you? Went away.
Can you turn the lights off so we can see the pictures better?
Sure.
What do you need?
Can we turn the lights off so the pictures can be seen better?
Yes, someone else had a question. Yes. I think we spent about 1.5 years, and there was something going on every week. And so we would, try and get out as much as we could. But yeah, it was about 1.5 years. And it was mostly hiking around here, focusing on hills whenever we could. Yes. Yes.
How many people in your group total, and how many porters went with you?
I can answer the people. We had about 4 people. That was on three different trails. And one trail we had 3 people. One trail we had 24 people. And who was the Majemi trail? 12. I'm sorry, you asked the second part of that question.
How many porters went with you carrying?
Rick, do you remember how many? 120?
540.
Any other questions?
What was the range of temperatures that you went through?
That's a good question.
Older. Not to about 15 degrees. But the 15 degrees doesn't really tell the whole story because when it's windy and your altitude, it can be really, really cold. People are moving very slow, you're not generating heat, so you're wearing a heavy down jacket. Wish you could see some of those pictures better in your body, because you can't really see body. You usually have that in the that would tell you. Where did you have the story of that jacket too that you wore, Bonnie?
That was Bill's jacket.
Yes, I thought, yeah.
That was his jacket. And I probably started wearing that about, let's say for sure day 4. But probably about day 3, I started wearing that. Not so much for hiking. I definitely wore it for hiking on summit night. But I wore it like at night when we would get to camp. I would wear it at night, probably by day 3 or 4. But yeah, the first couple of days was fine. We got cold.
How did you acclimate to the altitude?
I'm sorry.
How did we out?
Holy, yeah. We walked very slowly.
What's the average weight you carried on your day back?
Whatever you need in the day pack.
Average weight.
The weight, yeah, the weight maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 pounds maybe.
Would you do it again, John?
Oh, my friend Sharon is wondering if I would do that. There's no question, and I know Robin said that before too. For me also, it was life-changing. I mean, it has helped me make decisions that I can push myself further than I thought I would be able to push myself. I probably would not do that one again. There's nothing I might do, but not that one.
Did you encounter any wildlife? Any wildlife?
No. Well, the monkeys. The monkeys on the first night. Oh yeah, that's okay. And that's in the book too. So I'm telling you, you do not have to buy the book. We're just telling you the whole thing. The first night, in the middle of the night, we had really the rainforest, and the monkeys were just all over. And I really had to pee. And I unzipped the tent, and just as I unzipped the tent, there was a monkey right above. I mean, he was in a tree right above the tent, making a noise that I had never heard in my life. I immediately zipped it back down again. It just hung on tight till morning. But yeah, in our trailhead, we saw a lot of elephant dung. Ravens, yeah. Yeah, the white-necked chameleon. And then we went on safari. And we did see a lot of animals there. Pardon? Yeah. Ate a goat.
You said prior to Robin calling you decided that it's time for your story to be told. What would you say is the major thing about your story that you wanted to be told, you thought needed to get out there?
I think it's just the idea of getting through some pretty difficult things. And as I've said, this is not a how-to book. And I did it in some kind of crazy ways. You know, I mean, some of them are simple things that, you know, somebody might read it and scratch their head and say, why would she do that? And I think the other thing that Robin has done just a fabulous job with this book, is it gives people permission to do things that, may not seem right. It's like, oh, people might think this, or don't worry, do what you need to do. Once again, thank you, thank you, thank you.